Hello and welcome to another Performance Architects webinar snippet. These snippets include excerpts of webinars that are accessible by going to our website at www.performancearchitects.com and registering for our Learning Center, a community and forum for on-demand business education in the business intelligence and enterprise performance management arenas and related topics. Performance Architects is a business and technology consulting company that helps companies initiate and sustain big changes in their performance management and business intelligence environments and processes. Head over to our channel after this video or come back in the future to learn best practices, hear overviews, and take part in lessons we have designed to help you. We're focused on continuing to develop this community, and we welcome any recommendations you might have for future content. Thanks and enjoy.
So now to get into the lay of the land and financial and analysis and reporting options. Some of you may have heard me talk about this before. It's definitely something that's very standard out there in the marketplace. Generally, when finance organizations, and let's be honest, who oftentimes owns the board book or owns that management reporting and financial reporting package, it's generally the CFO's office. And when we come into work with organizations, we see organizations follow a very similar path of evolution. First of all, they have to put in place transaction processing, a general ledger, a Salesforce system, APAR, all those things that you basically need to keep the lights on in your organization. 15 or 20 years ago, they might not have even had transaction processing systems in the way they think about them today. But these days, even if it's QuickBooks, or even if it's a Microsoft product, you've got something to really help you organize and think about those transactions. Then on top of that, generally, smaller organizations especially end up with boards that are very, very interested in their financial and regulatory reporting, but as you get bigger, you also have the same problem. So oftentimes the next thing that comes up is, gosh, how do we tell our stakeholders, both internal and external, how we're performing? And then how do we report back to our internal shareholders to really make sure that they're managing their activities towards helping the business grow? And that's where you end up getting into managerial reporting. From there, once people understand what the financial outcomes are and the customer outcomes, whether you're mission-driven and your customer is a social service client, or whether you're for-profit and your customer is someone paying you for goods or services, the next thing really is, you have those outcomes of how many customers, how well did they do, and frankly also what value did they bring to the organization, either in achieving the mission or in financial outcome. Now how can we help drive those outcomes through changing our behavior? And that's really where you get into focusing on adding value, not just keeping the lights on, but really becoming a healthier organization. That's usually through decision support and analysis, or what oftentimes is called business intelligence. And then that oftentimes gets linked in with the planning and forecasting process. Because as many of you have heard me say before, at the end of the day, how you spend your money becomes your strategy. So even though your board may have a grand vision of where the organization should be, if people's incentives and activities on a daily basis aren't tied to that vision, then you're never going to move towards it. And that's really what performance management is all about. That being said, so everybody has this grand vision. Generally, they're all evolving in a similar direction. But there's a lot of problems that are still out there for organizations. And we always tend to break these into technology, information, people, and process. And I bolded some that might be particularly interesting to you as issues that you're trying to address. So technology. A huge percentage of large and even larger size or a larger size group of medium and small organizations are still using Excel as their primary reporting and analysis platform. No surprise there. Most of you have enterprise licenses to the technology, and gosh, is it flexible, but gosh, does it come with a lot of different issues and risks that we'll get into in a little bit. And then the next common point there is the no common metadata layer, which also ties in under process around no data governance process. Even though you may have data in place, you may not agree on the definitions of that data. Imagine and think back to some of the discussions you probably had with coworkers as you're trying to report out on information. Well, what is a full-time employee? Does that include subcontractors? Does that include the people who are working 30 hours a week? Does that include people who are interns? That's a common question. What's a region? Do you mean the region for distribution? Do you mean the region for sales? Do you mean the region for our product offerings by the way they're defined? And what's a customer? Is that someone who buys directly from us or someone who buys from a third party as well? So those are kinds of some of the kinds of things that get involved very much in these reporting and analytics processes. In addition, information, that leads right into this next discussion, which is there's really no formal approach and no agreed upon way to communicate an organization's strategy and to prioritize spending. So your board may have one way of looking at information, your executive leadership team may have another, your management team may have a third, and the people out there doing operational and tactical work in the field may have a totally different way that they think about the business. That's not healthy. So consistency of information is important. And finally, as I alluded to before, really people's incentives need to be aligned with what the company or the organization is trying to achieve.